mentioned sa introduction is I'm a Cebuano, proud Cebuano po, na based na here in Laguna. And again, I'd like to thank Southwestern University and the Veterinary Medicine Student Council of Southwestern and Doc Erla for the invitation for this talk. And I think this is very timely right now that I'll be discussing basic troubleshooting to poultry medicine. As the industry right now, we're looking at a lot of challenges, and it would be nice to have everybody help or chip in terms of trying to help the livestock industry, especially poultry production. So, let's make this as interactive as possible. So, if you have any questions, comments, just put it in the chat box immediately and we'll try to discuss. And basically, the objective of my talk this afternoon is that, at the end of my presentation, I would like, for example, for the vet students attending right now, give you an idea how a livestock veterinarian or a chicken doctor does his work. And if you're going into the poultry practice, or if you're already a practitioner but you're not really, kumbaga, poultry is not your specialty, but because you're a licensed vet and then you got some friends with poultry operations, these are one of the things that you can do so that you can help those friends. So hopefully with this presentation, I would be able to help a lot of people, a lot of students, be career and look at what the career of doing medicine for poultry would give you. So with this, a brief introduction lang po. So, a brief introduction. I'm Dr. Laranas. I'm currently the president of the Chicken Doctors. So, the Chicken Doctors, we're a group of veterinarians and practitioners with the aim to provide quality, objective, and professional technical services to poultry operations all over the country. Currently, we started at 3 million layers 2015. Right now, we are catering to at least 8 million layers all over the Philippines and 1 million broilers a month po ang alaga ng Chicken Doctors. Alright? So, we try to professionalize the consultancy and specialization with livestock poultry with our core values of trust, competence, and professionalism. And basically this afternoon, what I'm going to share to you is how we systematically try to troubleshoot farms, okay, or poultry operations. So let's start. What are the guide questions, or what's the guide to basic troubleshooting for poultry? I have this seminar before during the pandemic, but this is a different seminar in ways na marami akong in-inject na information for students to appreciate also. Okay, so if you're working in the Philippines, you will be, this is where the chicken doctors are very active. We're very active in the following poultry operations. We're active in broiler breeders, in layers, broilers, and some of my members are active on the pound. Now, all of these are poultry operations. They're the same chicken, Galus domesticus, but operation has a different objective for them to be considered successful or productive. So for example, if you are in a breeder operation, the main objective of a breeder operation is the production of live chicks. You want to have eggs with chicks inside them that hatches to become chicken. If you are in a layer operation, you are producing table eggs. So the eggs you eat in the morning, those eggs come from these animals. And if you like the occasional fried chicken or other parts of the chicken, that comes from broiler operations. Wherein the objective is to produce a chicken with a lot of meat so that they'll be able to feed the country. And for game fowl, this is a cultural thing. And this has been, sabi nga, I just learned that here in Negros, the game fall industry is an 8 billion peso industry in that province alone lang daw. So, this is one of the sources of income and tawag ito, aliw ng ating mga racers. So all of these operations, all of this has their own problem. So any problem that will trigger that they don't produce well. For example, if the breeders, they have a lot of hatching eggs but they don't have chicks. Layers, you've got a lot of alive birds but no eggs. Or you've got broilers that do not grow too fast. There's a problem. And that's where veterinarians are very important, and that's where we come in. So, once we start the troubleshooting now, as always, as with any case, you always get your basic information or your clinical history. Alright? What is the information immediately that you should know if you are being consulted? First, know what farm it is and where it is located. It's very important to know this information because there are some diseases or some problems that you would see that are affected by location. And you would see that, for example, here in Batangas. In Batangas alone, one municipality like San Jose, we have almost 15 million layers in just one area alone. You go to Cebu, Bantayan Island, I know there are more chickens in Bantayan than people. So, that's one of the first things you have to know. The farm name and the location. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the owner? Are you talking to the farm manager? Next, the type of operation. So again, if somebody calls, you have to know what is the operation. Is it a layer operation, a breeder operation, a broiler operation, or a game found operation? Not asking this question might lead to wrong or recommendations that are not applicable to their situation. Now, with livestock and poultry medicine, this is different from companion animal medicine, wherein you talk about per animal. In livestock, especially for poultry, you are talking about flock medicine. You are trying to heal or you're trying to troubleshoot the whole flock, not just one bird. So that's why you have to ask, how many birds are we talking about? And for example, they want you to visit the farm. How many buildings are there inside your farm? In the buildings, how many chickens are inside the buildings inside the farm? Just to give you an idea for commercial layers right now, a commercial layer could be as low as 500 birds per house to 10,000, 15,000 birds per house. That's for layers. You go to broilers, you have your conventional buildings housing 5,000, 10,000 birds per house to your controlled climate buildings that would handle 25 to 45,000 birds per house. That's how many patients you have. So those are the things you have to know first, kaagad, because you will be able now to look at how grave or how serious the situation is, especially when they talk about mortalities. So for example, I get this call, Doc, I have a problem. There are a lot of dead birds. Yun ang sabi, a lot of dead birds. And I said, how many dead birds do you have? Sir, 10. 10 birds? That's not that many. But then when I asked, wait, how big is your farm? I only have 100 layers. Now 10 is a lot of birds already. But for example, if there was a farm with, again, a lot of dead birds, and then 10 birds, namatay. How many birds do you have? 45,000. Wait, that's not that many. So it gives a perspective how serious the situation is once you ask the numbers of what you're trying to troubleshoot. Okay? Next, you have to know your birds, or especially some mga pilyo dyan, you know your chicks. Know what type of breeds your client is taking care of. So what are, for example, if you look at layers, what are the common layer breeds here in the Philippines? You'd always hear about the Lowman, the Cal, High Sex, Shaver, H&N, Highline, and Bangka. All of this, because we're producing white-colored eggs, white table eggs, they all have white feathers. They all have. They say that you can differentiate these honestly know if the bird is a lowman or a shaver nature just by looking at it. Ganun siya nakakalito. Okay? But it's important you know what breed you're talking about. So, if you forgot to ask the type of operation their client was reporting, but the client tells you, "No, I have a problem with my high-sex birds." This gives you an idea, okay, we're talking about layers. Or with my decalb birds, we're talking about layers. Alright? So if you hear these names, you're talking about birds that produce stable eggs. Now, if you hear the breeds like Cobb, Ross, Indian River, Arbor Acres, now these are your broilers. And again, itsura-wise, I cannot differentiate once it's already an adult. And all of them taste the same for me. If you put it in a lechon manok or inasal, all these birds taste the same to me. So, but these are the common broiler breeds in the Philippines that you will encounter if you will be troubleshooting. And this will be very important later as I discuss in troubleshooting. So for basic information, after knowing how many birds that you're talking about, it's very important to know about the age of the birds that you are trying to troubleshoot. For layers, we measure the age by weeks. Okay, from pullets to laying age, you ask, if you're taking care of layers, what's the age of the layers with the problem? If they say it's 16 weeks or 18 weeks, 40 weeks, it gives the veterinarian an idea what is the supposed to be performance at that age. Now here for broilers, we measure the age of broilers in days. Kasi for broilers right now, the technology and the genetics have improved a lot. We used to call broilers 45 days old chicken because you need 45 days to produce a kilogram of meat, broiler meat. Right now, broilers, you can produce a kilogram of meat at 21 to 22 days, and then you produce your manok for lechon manok or for inasal at 28 to 30 days. So there's a difference, all right? If the one reporting to you is telling you ages at weeks, you are looking at long-lived birds like layers or breeders. If they talk about days, then they might be talking about broilers. Now, how is this important? As I have said, certain ages, there is a certain standard that you have to get. So, for example, you got this farm complaining that they have a lot of problems with excuse me lang po Okay, sorry for that interruption. That's the concern when you work from home. Delivery. It's not shabby though. But anyway, going back to my topic. For example, once there's a problem, you look at the age and you look at the standards that if the birds are healthy, it should be at that standard. So for example, you want to buy ready-to-lay pullets, and the ready-to-lay pullets at 16 weeks of age to be delivered to you is they're saying, oh, it's very nice, it's good, but it's at 800 grams. Now you look at the standard, wait, 16 weeks, 800 grams, when the weight should be 1.247. So you know already that something is wrong. Alright? Next. Also with the age, you would see certain ages you need different types of feed types depending on the age. That's why it's very important to ask what's the age of the chickens you're trying to troubleshoot. Now talking about feeds, you will see earlier, there are different feed types. Starter, grower, developer, pre-lay, start lay. If you're looking at broilers, you're looking at booster, starter, grower, finisher. And laying, there's laying, but there are different types. And you have to look at that they eat it properly. so that they develop properly also. And how do you know if the birds are healthy? Birds are healthy, you measure that with their feed consumption. If the birds, you have to ask how many grams of feed does this bird eat per day. If the owner does not know that, you can do that by asking how many sacks of feeds were finished in a day. Then you divide it to the whole population. You get an idea already of how many grams per bird that were already consumed by those birds. And you have to ask also sometimes the lighting program. Always remember, for birds, for livestock, as long as there's light, they feed. You turn off the light, they rest, they sleep. Okay? So sometimes you would, at some farms that do not have the proper lighting program, you would see their feeding behaviors are not normal also. Okay? I am seeing a lot of questions in the chat. Okay, this is noted. But I just noticed this question. When birds are traveled, how many grams do they lose maximum, especially from traveling from Luzon to Mindanao? Okay, that's a very good question with regards to this slide. Transferring birds, sometimes, you only lose around, siguro maximum na alam ko is 100 to 200 grams. But if you lose, actually, 100 grams is too much already nga na mawawala na weight. If you lose too much, they say, oh, it's 1 kilo here in Luzon, and it arrives in your farm at 800 grams. There's something wrong. I think that's too much for me, based on my experience. Right? So, again, because I was talking about feeds later, yes, feed should be converted. And how do you know if it's converted? You measure body weight. The body weight is, for me, is one of the quantitative measures to check if the birds are healthy or not, or if the feeds are good or not. You get the body weight, you compare it to the standard that you would see, and you would always be able to give an idea if the birds are healthy or not. Also, with feeds and performance, if you look at layers, you also look at egg production. And here, egg production, we usually measure it through hen day. That's the number of eggs produced by the certain number of chickens on this day, and you express it as a percentage. So, for example, I have 40-week-old layers performing at only 75% at 40 weeks. You would all get an idea immediately that, oh, those birds have a problem. Because at 40 weeks of age, layers should be at around 85 to 90% of their weight. And how do you measure percent hen day? You, some farms count number of trays, some farms count number of pieces of eggs. So, for example, when you troubleshoot layers, as I've said, different breeds have different standards. And if you do not know the chicken you're talking about, you will have a problem. Now, for example, you're looking at 30-week-old layers, and you're saying, oh, the weight is only 1.5. These birds are payat, so this will not lay eggs. But then, oh wait, it's a high sex. So, it's at standard weight. But if a lukman at 30 weeks is at 1.5 or 1.6, that bird is not at standard. That bird is thin and won't be at the body weight that will produce a lot of eggs. And if you would see in this graph, as the birds grow older, they grow heavier. So that is why we can measure if the birds are healthy. If you see birds as they grow older, they lose weight, then that is already indicating that there's a problem. Okay, that is for layers. Now for broilers, it's a different thing. Okay, again, for layers, at a certain age or a certain quality, not all layers perform the same. For example, when you talk about livability, that is, kumbaga, how sturdy these birds are and their survivability outside your farm. And what they're saying is, if you look at the H&N Supernic versus Loman Extra, you would see a Supernic would have a 95% higher livability as compared to the 90% extra. So you would expect that for this flock, there's a certain amount of mortality is expected as compared to this flock. But if you're looking at production, you would see there are also different types of performances. And this is where you will now look at, when you troubleshoot birds, if they are performing to these standards. Okay? Now for broilers, I've said these are the most common broiler breeds in the Philippines, Dog, Indian River, and Ross. On certain days of growing these birds, there are certain broiler weight targets you have to reach. And one of the most important would be the 7-day weight. For me, it's on the weekly weight is very important. 7 days weight would be.
So, going back to the previous slide of Doc Oji about livability, you would notice here in Mindanao, we have the breeds like Loman, we have the breeds like H&N, the Shaver White, the Decal, the High Sex, we have the Isa White. In my experience, talking about livability, it also depends on how you manage your farm. If you're not able to hit the target weight, especially for Loman, you'd see a lot of prolapses, a lot of lamenesses. So it would also decrease the livability. And usually the passing rate of livability is 90%. But in a conventional cage system wherein the climate is not that consistent like the CCS or the tunnel vents, then you would see a lot of backyard farmers raising questions on why are they having a lot of lamenesses, why are they having a lot of prolapses, especially with the Loman breed, because they're big birds in a small cage. Now, looking at H&N and Shaver, which have, relatively a much better egg size with good livability and good performance, that is why I would like to push more on the Shaver and H&N. So, let's continue with Doc Oji's explanation.
Especially right now with the current state of some viral diseases, you would see spikes in mortality, and we're counting number of birds per day. And for my practice, I always ask, how many birds died today? How many birds died yesterday? Because I always compare is if the birds' mortality is increasing. Tumataas ba ang mortality? Usually what alarms me is when mortality doubles per day. Okay? For example, you've got 5 birds, then tomorrow it's 10, tomorrow then it's 30, and then that would indicate that there's a disease happening, or there's a problem happening. Okay? Mostly when I troubleshoot, I also ask, when was most of the mortalities collected? Do you get more birds early morning, or do you get more dead birds in the afternoon, or while the day is there? This usually indicates for birds that I collect early in the morning. I weigh these dead birds, and usually what I observe for birds that die early in the morning, they are the small birds or the birds that were not able to eat. And usually if I've got a lot of birds dead during the day, then that gives me, it suggests to me that there's a disease or there's a problem ongoing in the farm that affects even when the birds are awake. Now, once you look at mortality, once you troubleshoot, you have to pinpoint where this is happening in the farm. What building is affected? How many buildings right now are having a lot of dead birds? This is part of the troubleshooting. And once you get inside the building, you have to ask, where did most of these birds die? In front, in the middle, or at the back? Or is it all around? Why is this important? In epidemiology, you have to learn to locate where is the possible source of infection. Okay? That's why you ask where the birds are located. And what is the weight of the dead birds? Again, most dead birds in livestock are usually underweights. But if you get dead birds at normal weights or standard weights, then that is suggesting something is killing these healthy birds. Now you're looking now at viruses and you're looking at other diseases that could have caused this. Now, what happens now if you don't have a lot of mortality? Then you get morbidity, so you get their sick birds. You ask the owners, are the birds weak? Are they eating or not? So are the birds inactive? That's why you ask how much feeds did they eat. You put it in standard. I have a lot of farms that I have already troubleshooted and I've said, your birds are not eating. And they would try to argue with me, but then when we look at the records and compute, then they would realize, oh, yes, that's true. My birds have not been eating already for a while. So once you were able to troubleshoot that, then you try to find the reason why the birds are not eating. You also look at how healthy they are. So for birds, you have your combs and wattles. A healthy bird should have, especially with very good ventilation, they have red combs and wattles that indicates good health. But if you would see that it is pale, bluish, or shrunken or dry, then something is wrong. And the eyes, so later I have a video that I could show you. When I troubleshoot birds, the eyes are one of the, what can you say, the windows to the health of birds. A healthy bird will have a bright round eye looking at you, very alert. But if the birds are weak, you would see it swollen or teary-eyed, or it has pus, and that indicates a problem. Now, if you're looking at birds with that are laying eggs, like the layers, you look at the quality of eggs produced. Are the birds on the eggs a perfect shape, misshapen, shellless, soft shells, or a lot of broken eggs happening? If you look at broilers or look at pullets, chicks, what you look at is, are the birds the same size? Or there are a lot of small birds and big birds together, then there's something wrong. Okay? Now, if you're looking at disease, you all can now ask, what was the last vaccine given? And how was it given? Because you would have to check, how come these birds are sick if these birds were vaccinated? Then you have to check, were the vaccines given properly? And usually, this is one of the challenges I have right now. Sometimes, these farms call the vet, but they already administered medicine even without the recommendation of the vet. So that's why you have to ask also, what medication has you given? What is the dosage and the duration of treatment? And how long did you give these drugs or antibiotics without the consultation of the vet? Because you have to know did the medication help or did the medication actually make it worse? And you also ask, what are the supplementations used in water in the feed? So usually, well, for vitamins, multivitamins, amino acids, vitamin E, selenium, acidifiers, those products don't need veterinary prescriptions, but it would still be nice to consult a vet on the supplementations used. So you ask all of this, have this been given properly? Now, for vaccines, you have to check. There's a live vaccine and a killed vaccine. A live vaccine contains the virus actually that is alive at a weakened state or attenuated state, and you give it to the bird so that there's some replication done by the live virus to promote antibody production. If you have an inactivated vaccine or a killed vaccine, this contains parts or of the antigen or the organism. It is now injected to the bird with certain amounts of adjuvant to stimulate the immune system for protection. Now, have to ask, how were these vaccines given? Because if these vaccines were not given properly, then that may be the reason why these birds are sick, because the vaccines did not work well. So for example, if you have to give an inactivated vaccine or killed vaccine, one of the best ways to give it is through the intramuscular injection through the breast. Okay? But if you're looking at, usually for intramuscular injections, you use that for layers, breeders, and big mouse. But if you're looking at broilers or chicks, because the birds are still small, and it's so hard that you inject a needle into these birds, you opt to use several vaccine administration styles, like through drinking water, through coarse spray, or manually drop vaccine per chicken per eye. Diba? And yun, you have to ask, what are the antibiotics used? Because certain antibiotics work for certain bacterial diseases. So for example, if you're looking at E. coli, then they should have used at least TMPS or trimethoprim sulfadiazine, flumequine, lincomycin, perspectinomycin, amoxicillin, enro. As you would see, some of these antibiotics work for other diseases, but some diseases need separate antibiotics. So for example, you have a mycoplasma problem. If you use amoxicillin on a mycoplasma problem, it won't work that well. Why? Mycoplasmas do not have cell walls, and amoxicillin needs to work on a cell wall. That's why it does not work. What's good enough to use for mycoplasma? Use the macrolides like ilucin, diltiazem, or thiamulin, or you use broad spectrum antibiotics like quinolones, like enrofloxacin or difloxacin, or combinations. Alright? Now, again, you have to look at that if you have to do this without consulting a veterinarian, it might be too expensive, because you're giving in drugs and not knowing, and you just give drugs like a shotgun and pray, hopefully, you're able to heal the disease that you are having a problem with. So that's very dangerous. Okay? But still, if you're troubleshooting, you look at these drugs. For example, this person had a problem with infectious coryza and has been using enrofloxacin. And you see that, oh, the disease is still there. Why is this happening? Then that might be a case that the coryza happening is already resistant to enrofloxacin. And you have now to rotate the antibiotic usage. So these are indications and at least basic information for a young veterinarian or practitioner to know. Okay? Parang kinakabahan na ako. Ang dami ko nakikita pop-up sa chat ng questions, but don't worry, we'll be answering all of that. Okay. Now, especially if you're not yet an expert and you want to consult an expert after, it would be nice to provide photos or videos of the case so you can consult. So what are the usual signs you want to check? So you want to check pictures of the swelling of the eyes, dirty vents or the puwet. If it's a dirty soil, especially if the combs and wattles, I want to look at how pale it is or how discolored it is. I also want to look at the brooding or building setup. If the building is too small or the building was too wide, what were the pictures of the vaccines or antibiotics used? And if you get a video of behavior that's not normal, like birds trembling, birds gasping, panting, that would be nice, because it will give you an idea what's really happening or what's killing the birds. One good sign of a good practitioner. This vet should know how to open up birds or do necropsy. Necropsy is an autopsy that's done on animals, okay? So, autopsy, usually tao. Pag necropsy is a hayop yan. So for necropsy, what you're looking at is you open up birds to look at lesions inside that may indicate disease. So you look at the air sacs, the gizzard, and the proventricular junction of poultry, Air sacs because the respiratory system of a chicken is different from a pig, dog, or cat. Wherein lungs are one of the most important organs for these mammals, but for birds, air sacs are very important also in maintaining a good healthy respiratory system in the birds. So you check those. There's a different digestive system for chickens also. That's why there's the gizzard and the proventricular junction. And then you look at the intestines. Kumbaga, you have to open this up from the duodenum to the ileum to the jejunum, and you will see what's really happening to the large intestines, to the colon. Now, if you're looking at layers and breeders, you open up the birds, you have to look at how many eggs are inside, or if there are eggs inside. Then the liver, then the kidneys. And if you're looking at younger birds, especially that there are certain diseases that attack these specific organs like Gumboro disease or infectious bursal disease, it usually attacks the of fabricious in younger birds. And then you check the trachea. Okay, Pasitabe, I know I'm talking to vet students, but I know that there are some non-vet personnel or people here. I'll be showing pictures of necropsy. So you will see a little blood, you will see a little feces, so it's just a warning. Okay. The bursal fabricius would look like this. This is usually found near the rectum of a young bird. And what you want to see is it should be healthy. You don't want to see it bloody, spotted, or with gel, or too swollen, because that would indicate a problem. That would indicate Gumboro. Now, if you look at the liver, this is the liver, this is the gizzard, and this is the proventriculus. You look at these signs because it indicates if the digestive system is good. You look at the liver if it's a healthy color. The healthy color for liver is around maroon or brownish. And once you get it as yellowish or spotted, that's not a good sign. Or when you open up the liver, you get a very large liver, the inflammation of the liver, you get hepatitis, that's not a good sign also. Now, nakikita ba yung pointer when I share?
Yes,
Can you see the
Doc.
pointer?
Yes, Doc.
Ha?
Yes po, yes po.
Okay, so I'm pointing right now to the proventriculus, okay? The proventriculus, what you want to look at is this should not be bloody, no petechial hemorrhages. And if you look at the gizzard, these are not healthy gizzards actually, because these gizzards have ito, mga sugat-sugat na to. We call that gizzard erosions. And that would indicate that something is wrong and that's hurting the gizzard. Okay? So it's very important that you also, as the veterinarian, even though you're not a specialist for poultry, you at least know the basic organs. Okay? That's anatomy. So sabi nga ni Doc Erla sa akin, parang sa second year nga daw kinukuha tong anatomy. Okay? Then the kidneys. For the kidneys of poultry is embedded at the dorsal part of the chicken. And if it's swollen, different colors, or you get spotted white stuff there, that's not normal. This one is a swollen kidney, and usually it happens when the bird does not drink water anymore. Now, this is a very bad gizzard. This is a gizzard that's has been this is a gizzard that I opened up. Wherein the birds were not eating very well. And how will the bird eat very well if the gizzard looks like this? This would only indicate that the feed is not processed properly, and instead of giving nutrients, is actually hurting the chicken. And as you would see, the proventriculus, there are already petechial hemorrhages there. Now, this is an example of a liver that does not look good. As you would see, if I don't know if you could see it in your screens, it's kind of spotted. And usually these kinds of livers could be an indication of bacterial infection. Or sometimes when you look at it, if it's covered with a lot of exudates, cheesy exudates, then you are looking at could be Mycoplasma or E. coli together. For intestines, it should be smooth, but if it looks like this, for example, you would see this slight petechial hemorrhages or slight indications of blood, you are looking at enteritis or looking at coccidiosis depending on the signs. Alright? When you look at the trachea, what you want to look at the trachea is, this is not a good trachea. This is a trachea with petechial hemorrhages. So that's not a good sign also once you see that. It should be clear, not have mucus inside it when you open it. And this is what you call the proventricular junction. The proventricular junction, as you would see, there's this little blood type here. This is the bleeding. And sometimes when you're suspecting viral disease like Newcastle and other diseases, you would see this petechial hemorrhages in this junction. Now, why is very important to open up birds? It's because some diseases look alike. Okay? Sometimes when you look at the old guys or old farm managers, they would say, there's swelling of the eyes or conjunctivitis, they would say it's already coryza. But it happens in mycoplasma, it happens in infectious bronchitis, it happens in tracheitis. So it's very important for you to be able to look at specific lesions that will indicate the problem. Because if you troubleshoot and guess immediately, you might be giving the wrong recommendations and you might not be helping the farm. Okay? Now, also it would be nice to get the complete farm records once you are troubleshooting the farm, because for the daily farm record, you can see the daily production if it's layers, daily feed consumption and daily mortality, and the weights if you're looking at broilers or chicks. Usually, for the chicken doctors, we prefer all of this data in an Excel format, or give us the raw data, then we'll put it in an Excel, because what we do is we plug it and we look at patterns. Now, this is an example of one of the farm I've been troubleshooting before, and they were complaining that the birds at 30 weeks had high mortalities. And as I reviewed this flock, I was able to observe that on the first week of life, when it was delivered to the farm, it already had a high mortality. And looking at this part of the mortalities, we were able to observe that most of the birds delivered were of low quality already. And as the birds were trying to survive, it spiked again when it was stressed, when after all those vaccinations and on the transfer, we were able to see that most of the vaccinations done on this age did not work because the birds were poor quality. So what's good about getting this farm information is once you put your computers with it, you can see a very good picture of what's really happening, and you will see patterns. So these patterns will help explain to the raiser and will also give the idea to the veterinarian where now to how to look at the disease and where to attack or stop the problem. Other relevant information you have to check. Usually stresses. Some birds need consistency. So sometimes when they change brands of feeds, you would see a problem. Or sometimes when you change farm personnel. The other farm boy went out, there's a new farm boy there that does not know how to take care of the chicken, so that's management. Then you would see another problem. When you shift in product brands, they used to use this brand, then change to a cheaper brand, and eventually the problem started. You have to look at that also. And also look at what was the weather conditions during the case they were reporting that. Because for example, here in Batangas, or where I usually work, it's hot right now. I go out, it's 30, 31 degrees, but then, well, as it goes in the evening, it can go as low as 21. So those are extreme temperatures, and you would see the birds really reacting to that. Alright, so how do we apply these basic troubleshooting techniques in poultry medicine right now? This next video is an example of how I walk through the farms applying all these problems, okay? Now, again, I'll be having a disclaimer. I will be opening up a bird here, and I will be doing euthanasia on the sample bird. So baka may mag-react sa animal welfare. I did the, the, the proper way, and that is the dislocation to the occipital sa neck. And for this was a farm complaining to me that her young birds, these are 30-week-old layers, were having a drop in egg production. They were not reaching the standard egg production, and as I asked, there was low feed consumption, and they were saying that some birds already have some signs with their swelling in the eyes. So this is what happened. So I will talk to you about it while we're here. So as I have said, once you walk around the chickens, you would see what you immediately observe would be the combs and the wattles and their behavior. Okay? And as I've said, healthy birds have healthy round eyes that you would see immediately while walking around. Alright? So this facility has 10,000 birds, 10,000 layer birds. So as the complaint was given that there was a low feed consumption, so I was walking through this farm at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And as I was checking the feeders, if the birds were consuming the feed. So as you would see, medyo malangaw rin. Oops, sorry. So there could have been, there's something going on. Now, look closely as I walk through and check. As I've told you again, I look at the eyes. Did you see it? Did you see the bird with the problem here? Right? So when I saw this bird, I saw it was winking at me. So there's something wrong. So seeing one case, I have now to look around the farm to check if there are other birds showing the same signs. I check if everything is normal, so feeds and water. Now during this time, I am checking if there are other signs in the birds, because the initial sign on this bird was it had a lesion on the eye. It had a slight conjunctivitis. I was checking for parasites, for mites, mites. I was also looking for other lesions. Okay. Now this bird was an underweight. So, oops, sorry. So the bird was underweight. So I chose it to be a sample to do necropsy with. Alright? So usually sa armpits, sa vents for parasites nga pala. Okay, this is how you euthanize a bird. So during the time of bird flu in Pampanga, they have euthanized all of those birds affected by that. So that is approved by animal welfare. Okay, so this is necropsy. I usually start with the thighs and then express this bone. This bone usually would indicate if there's good calcium absorption. If there is some wounds or the color is not white or different, then that would mean there's poor bone development in this layer. Okay, so this one, so you see there's this lesion there. Then I exposed the keel bone. As I've said, this bird is underweight. As you would see, there's a sharp keel bone here that should have been covered with muscle. So I try not to open this up. You try to incise some of the ribs so that you'll be able to open up the breast muscle of the bird. Immediately you would see the liver. The liver, this is a normal color of the liver. So the liver is okay. There's no disease or problems that I checked. So this is a freshly euthanized bird. Sometimes you would observe that the heart still beats. Then you check the air sacs. The air sacs, this is that plastic-like cover that you would see covering the sacs. And you have to check if it's clear. So see, this is clear, indicating there's no respiratory problem on this bird. Then these are the egg follicles. This is the bile, the gallbladder. Then this is the proventriculus, then the gizzard. So I have to take that out to be able to check the whole digestive system. Alright, so I take that out and express the digestive system and check the proventriculus and the gizzard. Upon incision, I was able to look at, oh, this type of color of feeds inside the gizzard indicates a lot of bile acids. That's why it's green. And if you've got more bile acids than feed, that would indicate this bird is not eating that much. Okay? So this color is not normal. So that's why this bird is underweight, because it did not eat a lot. Then I check for other lesions, if there are gizzard erosions. This one is smooth. There are no petechial hemorrhages in the proventriculus, so it's okay. So why is the bird not producing a lot of eggs? And that's the time I look at the intestines. Upon looking at the intestines, I check this is not normal. You've got mucoid digesta, and the walls of the intestines are quite inflamed. So you express and look at what's really going on. And as you would see, you get a lot of this bile tinge digesta, indicating this bird was not eating. Now, Doc Erla, you're a teacher in parasitology. What do you see on this next segment? I saw this little friend. And this is a tapeworm. Okay? Now, this is not an adult tapeworm, but then as I expressed the intestine through the lower parts of the ileum, I saw the rest of its brothers and sisters there already. And you would see, okay, all of them are there. And it's a good thing I was wearing gloves, because this bird had a worm infestation. Okay? Now, because I was checking for other problems, so tapeworms were noted, I also checked the cecal tonsils. Now, for the cecal tonsils, you have to check that there should be no petechial hemorrhages there also, or other problems, because that might indicate some viral diseases like Newcastle. So this is a petechial hemorrhage, but this is not very indicative of viral problem. Then I open the mouth to express the trachea to check if there is also some lesions, and to check if the swelling of the eye had a problem with respiratory viruses. And as I would see, the trachea was clear, so there was no other problem there. So the main problem of the chicken, when I was troubleshooting that, was the bird had a tapeworm infestation. The farm had a tapeworm infestation. So what I did was to deworm the birds. You have to get rid of those parasites. Now imagine if I did not open up the bird and just looked at the swelling of the eye. I could have immediately prescribed antibiotics to come up with to solve the swelling. But because I was able to look at that there is parasitism inside, I had to address parasitism first before treating the obvious lesion. Because imagine, you gave a lot of antibiotics and then you would still suffer low egg production because you did not address the tapeworms inside. That is why it's very important, once you troubleshoot in poultry medicine, you have to look at all these aspects, ask these specific questions, and cover if everything is normal, so that you will come up with the proper diagnosis to help your clients. And always remember, yun nga, this is an old picture. Hindi siya updated. Kasi kung updated siya, dapat naka-face mask yung bird eh. But anyway, to protect birds from disease, you always check if the farm has good biosecurity, the farm is having good vaccination, did the medication program work, and if the chickens are doing. And also, you have to check also if the people are taking care of it properly with management. Now, if you were not able to look at that, that's the time you consult your veterinarian. So these are the chicken doctors. And we have a Facebook page. So like and follow us on Facebook. Prenomo ko na. So with that, this hopefully I shared with you the basic troubleshooting information if you're looking at trying to help your local poultry farm. So thank you for your attention. And I think this is time now for me to entertain a few questions. Yes, Doc Erlang, Rhyletina species. Okay. So, do I stop share na, Docs? Alright, thank you.
The floor is now open for the question and answer portion. If you have any questions or clarifications, feel free to send them in the chat box. We have questions that were sent to our VMSC Tech team earlier from the top. First question was from JV Longkob Katan. Good afternoon. Each location has different challenges, especially with existing diseases. Batangas, Nueva Ecija, Tarlac. When these birds are transported to other islands not having these diseases, are they introducing potential diseases not common in the island of destination?
I will have to agree. The birds from different places are very good mediums or vectors for other problems or diseases. And that's why the government right now is recommending transport of animals to different provinces to have a veterinary health certificate coming from their veterinarian, making sure and indicating that the birds transported are healthy with full vaccination program and free from bird flu. So, yun na po ang ginagawa. So, you have to let the people in the province know that if they are going to receive birds coming from other places, they should ask for these documents to make sure they're healthy. Kasi again, these birds are very good vectors for other diseases. Okay?
Thank you, Doc. Another question from Rapski Farm. Good day, Doc. We have a question because last week we experienced in our layers about the keel bone lateral deviation and fractured neck of the femoral head of our hens. Is this a sign or indication that our hens have low in vitamin D or in calcium mineral?
Okay. This is already a very good practice on my lecture. When the way he presented the problem, he did not tell me what type of chicken are we talking about. Are we talking about a layer, a game fowl? And how old is this layer or this chicken? So imagine me giving immediately a recommendation, not knowing that information. I might be making a wrong recommendation. My question first, if this is a layer chicken, if this chicken is beyond 60 weeks, 70 weeks of age, then sometimes these birds are already old. Their calcium deposits have been depleted by a lot of egg production. That might have led to the bird using up its own calcium reserves. That's why it became thin. But because I don't know the age, I cannot answer this query because the information is kulang. Right? So this is a very good exercise in trying to address these problems. You have to tell this racer, I need more information. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Another question in regards to the vaccination slide from Joseph. Doc, pwede ba kami magpalit ng same vaccine pero mas cheaper?
Well, economics is part of the practice. And my advice is always, if you're looking at shifting vaccines, always remember that not all vaccines are the same also. Okay? You might be using a vaccine, that's why it's pricier, because the duration of immunity is longer, or the vaccine reactions are lesser vaccine reactions. That's why it's pricier. Once you go to the cheaper brand, you might not get those benefits kasi, and you would perceive that that vaccine did not work. Alright? Once you shift vaccines, it's still best you consult a veterinarian with regarding to the program, or consult the veterinarian from the supplier to check if how do you use this vaccine. Okay? So, for example, some pricier vaccines have durations of immunity up to 2 months. But some cheaper brands only 4 to 6 weeks. So, the raiser should know this so that they will be able to adjust appropriately. But for me, honestly, as a third-party practitioner without a loyalty, or not naman without loyalty, in my experience with vaccines, all of this work. But it has to be programmed in a way that the veterinarian should know when's the best time to give it. Because the problem is, if you just copy and paste, it might not work the same way.
Okay, but another question daw po from Joseph. Doc, kulang ng calcium ang feeds namin. Sabi ng supplier, pwede kami magbigay ng calcium na medicine. Will it help or magpapalit ng ibang feeds?
Well, syempre, it would be better to buy feeds with complete nutrients. But then, cost is there. Now, you compute your cost. Kasi, if you buy this certain amount of feed because it's cheaper, but it tells you to put in calcium supplements because it has less calcium, baka the savings you got from buying this cheaper feed, kinakain lang ng supplementation mo. So, that's something to consider. But then, if the feed does not have that high calcium requirements or specifications in the feeds, it is best to put in your calcium supplements. You can do calcium grits, you can do calcium plus phosphorus in water, or you can have it mixed in the foods.
Another question, how do you encourage clients to reduce the usage of antibiotics, antimicrobials, considering the rise in AMR, antimicrobial resistance?
That's the time that, it's always nice to consult a veterinarian. Because ako as a practitioner, I don't go to farms as much as possible. I am hired by farms to prevent diseases from happening. I have to come up with programs to prevent diseases from happening. I encourage farms to call me to prevent disease. I don't want them to call me because the disease is already there. It's more practical to prevent disease, and I gave that with the picture of the chicken with the jacket. Have a good biosecurity program, vaccination program. You may now, once you prevent all of this, you may opt not to use a lot of antibiotics. But then, if there are breaches in these problems, that's the time you have to use antibiotics na kasi. So it's better to provide a very good environment for your chickens for you to prevent the usage of such. Lesser use of antibiotics kasi it's also better for growing your chickens because once the problem is there, you get a more sensitive reaction once you introduce an antibiotic. So ako naman, responsible use of antibiotics ang pinopromote ko. I'm not saying no antibiotics ever. It's so hard in the Philippines, but it's doable. But it's expensive. Yun lang.
Another question, do you also handle cases for quail production, Doc? How different or similar is it the cases handled with chicken farms?
Honestly, I was able to troubleshoot a few quail farms. I have to admit, I'm not an expert with quail production, but most of the quails I have encountered would be once they are near other poultry operations, like you have a quail farm near a layer farm or near a broiler farm, they are more susceptible to the viral shedding from these larger farms. So even if the farms, the layers do not exhibit the disease, but because these farms are shedding, the quail farms near these farms are more affected. And they usually they usually react more. Also, I've noticed for quails, the nutrition for quails, they need higher protein. Kaya the ipot or the feces of quails are smellier than layers or broilers. So usually for quails, you have to control the ammonia buildup and you have to control your flies. Yun ang usual ko na-encounter for quails, and have a good vaccination program that would match the environment or your population inside the community.
Another question then. Hi Doc, is it okay not to do feeds transition from layer 1 to 2 if same brand naman? Thank you.
Yeah, you can do that, but it's expensive. Because layer mash 1 is more expensive than layer mash 2. So what do I do in my practice? What I do in my practice is, if I'm extending production of my layers due to layer mash 1, I would extend layer mash 1. But if due to the age of my layers, they're already declining, I'm not maintaining this good performance anymore, that's the time I shift to LM2 because it's now cheaper to maintain. Okay? So this is the difference in specs. Usually, LM1 is more healthier. Kumbaga, no issues. That's why once you prolong LM1 and it is the birds are responding by producing more, continue LM1. But if the birds are already on the natural decline of producing eggs, it's best to shift to LM2.
Doc, good PM. What are the costs of misshapen eggs and what is the solution?
Again, this is another question that needs a lot of information. Okay? Misshapen eggs is multifactorial. You can have diseases that can cause these problems, usually infectious bronchitis variants, Newcastle. You can also find it in tracheitis. You can find it in mycoplasma. So, these types of diseases can cause misshapen eggs. Now, if for feeds, if the nutrition is not very good, there's high mycotoxins, there's high problems, you get misshapen eggs also. Now, if the birds are underweight or management-wise, it's not very good, you get misshapen eggs also. So the solution is actually, again, going back, how old are these birds? Where did you get these birds? Because that's how you try to check what these birds really need so that they will not produce misshapen eggs. For example, for the one asking the question, if you have got misshapen eggs, my question for you was, when was the last time you vaccinated against Newcastle and infectious bronchitis? And what's the weight of your birds right now? That's my question to you. Answer me that, then go back to me, and I will tell you if what is needed. So this is what I'm talking about troubleshooting. Do not give an answer immediately, not knowing all the information. Because you'll give a wrong recommendation. Yun ang warning ko po lang. Give us the right information po.
Just a reminder for everyone, this webinar's sole purpose is for educational purposes only and is not an online consultation. As mentioned by Dr. Augie earlier, he cannot give an answer if he does not know all the details about the case. Please consult your veterinarian.
Or,
Another
sa mga taga-Southwestern, this is a step up to challenge, di ba? It looks like you have a lot of people you can help. Pero siguro after this presentation, yun nga, you just apply what I told about, then you can help these guys now. Help me help these guys.
curious question, Doc. Do you handle poultry farms that is GAHP certified? And if so, what are the common problems on those farms where their biosecurity and standards is high?
No. For GAHP, we call them GAHP, Good Animal and Husbandry Practices Certified Farms. These farms have very good systems. But those are systems. The usual problem from these systems is, again, the quality of birds that go inside and the infection pressure coming from outside the farm. So, the system can only minimize these problems, but once the problems breach their systems, they can immediately naman solve it because of the system. So that is something that a GAHAP, farm with GAHAP certification is more advantageous. Kasi nga may systems na sila in place, but that does not mean that they're GAHAP certified, they don't have problems anymore.
What is the age and a natural decline in layers?
Sabi nga, this is not a consultation, wala lang. Again, know your bird. As I've said, at the start of my presentation, know your bird. These performances can be found online. So, you're talking about, for example, you talk about a Loma breed. I usually find the decline starting at around 60 to 70 weeks of age. Talk about a decal. I see a decal but 70 weeks of age, hindi pa nagde-decline. So look at your bird. Look at the type of bird you're taking care of. What's the breed? And yeah, look at the manual. The manual will indicate to you what to expect. Pero post-peak ages usually is at 45 to 50 weeks of age.
Thank you, Doc. Another question, is viral shedding coming from vaccines given like ILD, etc.?
Yeah. Now, there are certain types of diseases that promotes viral shedding. ILT is one of them. Okay? ILT, if you use a vaccine as, for example, chicken embryo origin ILT vaccine, that's too aggressive, there will be viral shedding. But if you use a recombinant ILT vaccine, there is no shedding. You use a live Newcastle disease vaccine that is not cloned, that will have viral shedding. So know your vaccine also. Or consult your